The sensor array on the research vessel Infinite Horizon screamed warnings that made senior researcher Talvish want to shut down every system and run. His forearms moved across the console with practice speed, trying to make sense of readings that should not exist. The energy signature coming from Outpost 17 was wrong in ways that made his scales itch with ancient fear. "Commander Breshik, you need to see this," Talvish said, his voice tight. The Dralkeen commander moved to his station, her massive frame casting shadows across the screens. Breshik came from a warrior species, one that had survived the Great Silence by fighting when others hid. She studied the readings with narrowed eyes. "That outpost has been dead for 300 years, Breshik said. "What am I looking at?" "A signal, a strong one. It contains language patterns from at least 7 extinct civilizations. All of them vanished during the Great Silence." Breshik's expression hardened. The Great Silence was the wound in galactic history that had never healed. 12 entire civilizations, gone in less than a generation. No distress calls, no warnings, just empty worlds and drifting ships. The survivors had one rule that kept them alive. When something seemed connected to the Great Silence, you did not investigate. You marked it dangerous and moved on. "We should leave this sector," Talvish said. "Whatever is down there has been quiet for centuries. We do not want to wake it. That signal is calling for help," Breshik replied. "Listen to the translation." Talvish activated the audio. The voice that filled the bridge made his blood run cold. It spoke in multiple languages at once, layered and wrong, but the meaning came through clearly. "Alone. So alone. Please. Anyone. Help me. It has been so long. Please." "That could be a recording," Talvish said. "An automated distress beacon. Then we check it out. Quinn, prepare your unit for deployment." Officer Quinn stepped forward. He was Dralkeen like Breshik, covered in scars from a dozen campaigns. His response unit was the best the Galactic Council had. 15 soldiers, all veterans, all trained to handle situations that would make civilians panic. "Standard investigation protocol," Quinn asked. "Full combat readiness. If Talvish is right, and this connects to the Great Silence, I want you ready for anything." Talvish watched helplessly as Quinn's unit boarded their dropship. He pulled up the old records of Outpost 17. It had been a mining colony, nothing special. 200 residents. One day, they all stopped responding. When the first investigation team arrived, they found the colony intact, but empty. No Boethius. No signs of struggle. Just silence. The record showed 3 more investigation teams over the years. None reported anything unusual. The outpost was declared abandoned and forgotten. Until now, Quinn's voice came over the comm as a ship descended through the thin atmosphere. "Approaching target. Visual confirms the outpost structures are still standing. No power readings. No life signs. Copy that. Proceed with caution," Breshik ordered. Talvish monitored the telemetry from Quinn's unit. They landed 200 meters from the main settlement. The ancient buildings looked exactly like the old records showed, weathered but intact, arranged in standard colony layout. "Moving in on foot," Quinn reported. "The voice is louder here. It sounds like it is coming from beneath the main administration building." Talvish felt his heart's beating faster. "Commander, recommend we recall the unit. This does not feel right." Breshik ignored him, focused on the video feeds from Quinn's helmet camera. The unit reached the administration building. The door was open. Inside, dust covered everything. Quinn's team activated their lights, cutting through 3 centuries of darkness. "There is a stairway here," Quinn said. "Going down. The structure beneath is larger than our scans indicated." "How much larger?" Breshik asked. "The stairs descend at least 50 meters. The architecture does not match colony standard. This was built before the outpost. Much before." Quinn led his unit down. The walls changed as they descended, covered in symbols that predated any current galactic language. Talvish recognized some from his studies of dead civilizations. The voice grew louder with each step. "So long. So hungry. Thank you for coming. Thank you." "Quinn, I strongly advise retreat," Talvish said. "Those symbols are warnings. They say sealed, and do not open in at least 4 different extinct languages. We are already here, Quinn replied. Might as well see what we are dealing with. The stairs ended at a massive chamber. Quinn's lights revealed a space easily 300 meters across. The walls pulsed with faint blue light. At the center stood something that made Talvish gasp. It was a containment field, the same technology the ancients used for their most dangerous prisoners. Except this field was failing. Cracks of red energy spiderwebbed across the blue surface. Quinn, get out of there now! Talvish shouted. The voice changed. The pleading tone vanished, replaced by something cold and hungry. Not calling for help, calling for food. The containment field shattered. Quinn's scream cut through the comm. His video feed showed pure chaos. Red energy tendrils whipping through his unit. Soldiers firing weapons that seemed to have no effect. Bodies being dragged into a swirling mass of light and shadow. Fall back! Fall back! Quinn's voice was desperate now. It is not a prisoner. It is static. Breshik's hands flew across her console. Quinn, respond. Anyone. Silence. Talvish activated the emergency drones. They launched from the infinite horizon and raced toward the outpost. The feeds showed the ruins now glowing with unnatural red light. The drones descended toward the administration building point one by one. They went dark. Commander, Talvish said quietly, we need to leave this sector and request immediate military support. Perhaps orbital bombardment. Breshik stared at the dead screens. 15 of her best soldiers gone in minutes. Whatever was in those ruins had waited 300 years, and now it was awake and feeding. Send the distress signal. Breshik said, her voice hollow. Mark this entire sector as quarantine zone. The Infinite Horizon's long-range transmitters activated, sending warnings across the nearby systems. Talvish included every scan, every reading, every terrifying second of Quinn's final transmission. Deep in the ruins, something ancient stirred fully awake for the first time in centuries. It tasted the life force it had consumed and hungered for more. The voice echoed out through the dark, no longer asking for help. Now it was calling for prey. The emergency session of the Galactic Council turned into a shouting match within minutes. Representatives from 40 species filled the chamber, each voice adding to the chaos. Commander Breshik stood at the central podium, her report still scrolling on the main display. The solution is obvious, Breshik said, cutting through the noise. We perform orbital bombardment, sterilize the entire area. Whatever is in those ruins cannot be allowed to spread. Unacceptable, Talvish countered from his seat. That facility contains information about the Great Silence. Knowledge from 12 extinct civilizations. We would be destroying the best chance we have ever had to understand what happened. Your 15 soldiers are dead because of that knowledge, someone shouted from the upper gallery. 17, a quiet voice said. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Hendricks stood slowly from the human delegation section. She was older, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen too much. Humanity was new to the galactic community, barely 20 years since first contact. Their seat at the council was provisional, a courtesy extended to a species still learning how things worked. I am sorry, Breshik said. 17 life signs, Hendricks repeated. According to your own thermal scans from the drones before they failed, 17 members of Quinn's unit are still alive down there. The chamber erupted again. Breshik pulled up the data, her expression darkening as she confirmed it. Impossible. We saw the attack. No one could survive that. If the scans show otherwise, Hendricks said, which means we have people trapped in that facility. People we can still save. We cannot risk more soldiers for troops already lost, another representative said. This one was Peleth, from a species that prided itself on logical thinking. Every protocol dictates we minimize casualties. The logical choice is containment and bombardment. Logical, Hendricks said. Yes, I understand. She sat down. The debate continued for another hour. The vote was nearly unanimous. Orbital bombardment within 24 hours to ensure the entity did not escape. The human delegation abstained. Breshik found Hendricks after the session ended. Your people did not vote. No need, Hendricks said. You all made your decision. We made ours. What does that mean? Hendricks checked her communication device. It means we're going to get them out. The council will not authorize a rescue mission. It would be suicide. Then it is fortunate we did not ask for authorization. Breshik followed Hendricks to the observation deck. Through the massive windows, a ship appeared from faster-than-light travel. It was ugly, a cargo vessel that looked like it had been repaired with parts from 6 different ships. Scorch marks covered its hull. One of its engines sputtered inconsistently. That is your rescue team? Breshik asked. That is the Defiant. Best ship for impossible jobs in 3 sectors. The Defiant docked with the council station. Within an hour, its crew arrived in the briefing room. Breshik studied them with growing disbelief. The captain was a woman named Rodriguez. She looked to be in her 50s, with scarred hands and the kind of eyes that had seen combat. She walked with a slight limp. Behind her came Okafor, a tall man carrying enough medical supplies for a small hospital. He moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had treated injuries in active war zones. Next was Dmitri, a younger man with wild hair and oil stains on his clothes. He was already examining a holographic layout of the ruins, muttering to himself about power signatures. Finally, Patel entered. She was quiet, dark eyes constantly scanning the room, one hand resting casually near the weapon at her hip. You are the rescue team, Breshik said. We're the team that goes places when everyone else says no, Rodriguez replied. Hendricks says you have people trapped. We get people untrapped. The entity in those ruins destroyed 15 trained soldiers in minutes. 17, Rodriguez corrected, which means 2 survived initially. We will work with that. Talvish pulled up the Defiance records. Your ship has been marked as hazardous by 3 different port authorities. Your crew has violated 42 safety regulations. How do you expect to succeed where elite council forces failed? Rodriguez smiled. Because we are too stupid to know when we are beaten. Also, we cheat. Cheat. Dmitri spoke up for the first time. The council unit used advanced energy weapons and shields. According to your own reports, the entity absorbed or negated all of it. We use old kinetic weapons, simple explosives, technology, so primitive the entity will not know what to do with it. That is your plan. Breshik said, use inferior weapons? Inferior is relative, Patel said quietly. A rock thrown hard enough still kills. Okafor spread medical readouts across the table. The entity feeds on life force. That means the trapped soldiers are being kept alive for a reason. It is playing with them. That gives us time to work. You do not know that. Talvish protested. No, Rodriguez agreed. But I know people, and I know that things that kill for sport instead of food make mistakes. We will use those mistakes. Breshik wanted to argue further, but something in Rodriguez's expression stopped her. This was not bravado or ignorance. This was calculation. These humans had looked at an impossible situation and found the angles everyone else had missed. The council will not support this mission, Breshik said. Did not ask them to, Rodriguez replied. We leave in 1 hour. You can watch from orbit if you want. Might learn something. The crew of the Defiant left to prep their ship. Hendricks remained behind with Breshik and Talvish. They will die down there, Breshik said. Maybe, Hendricks agreed, but they will try anyway. That is what humans do. Talvish pulled up humanity's file in the council database. Most species had pages of cultural information, technological assessments, military capabilities. The human file was surprisingly short, mostly filled with observations and warnings. Species classification, death world origin, severe category. Talvish read aloud. Psychological profile, extreme persistence hunter behavior. Tendency towards self-sacrificial actions when protecting group members. Threat assessment approach, unconventional. Notable behavior pattern. Pack bonding extends to non-family members and occasionally to other species. He looked up at Hendricks. There is a note here in your file. It says, Honey Badger Protocol. What does that mean? Hendricks smiled. It means when something threatens our people, we do not run away. We do not calculate acceptable losses. We charge straight at the problem and we do not stop until either it is dead or we are. That is insane, Breshik said. Yes, Hendricks agreed, but it works more often than you would think. The Defiant undocked from a station and began its descent toward Outpost 17. Breshik and Talvish watched from the infinite horizon, tracking the human ship as it approached the glowing ruins. They have no chance, Talvish said. Breshik remembered Quinn's final transmission. Her best soldiers gone in minutes. Now 4 humans in a barely functional ship were flying straight toward the same fate. No, she agreed, but I think they know that already. The Defiant disappeared into the atmosphere. The voice in the ruins, which had been quiet since feeding, began to echo again. This time it sounded almost curious. New prey was coming. The Defiant set down 1 kilometer from the ruins. Rodriguez killed the engines and studied the sensor readings. The entire facility pulsed with red light that made her eyes hurt even through the filtered view screen. Radiation is within tolerance, Dmitri said from the engineering station. But the energy field is playing hell with advanced systems. Communications will be spotty. Targeting computers are useless. Good thing we brought iron sights, Patel said, checking her rifle. Okafor loaded his medical pack with supplies. Life signs are still showing 17 targets. They're clustered in the central chamber, approximately 80 meters below ground level. Rodriguez stood and grabbed her own pack. We go in through the maintenance shaft Dmitri found. Avoid the main entrance where Quinn's team got hit. Move quiet, move fast, get our people and get out. What about the entity? Patel asked. We talked to it. The crew exchanged looks. Rodriguez had a reputation for unusual solutions, but talking to something that had just consumed a military unit seemed extreme even for her. They left the ship armed with simple weapons. Kinetic rifles, chemical explosives, even a few blades. Okafor carried his medical gear. Dmitri had a portable scanner that still worked despite the interference. The maintenance shaft was hidden behind a collapsed storage building. Dmitri cut through the rusted door with a plasma torch. Inside, a narrow tunnel descended into darkness. Rodriguez activated her helmet light. Single file. Watch your footing. They descended in silence. The tunnel walls were covered in the same ancient symbols Talvish had identified. Warnings in dead languages. Patel ran her fingers across one set of characters. These say end of all things, she said quietly. Over and over. Cheerful, Dmitri muttered. The voice found them halfway down. It filled the tunnel, speaking in English now. Why do you come? For little lights in my darkness. Do you not fear me? Rodriguez kept walking. Got people to pick up? You can fear us if you want. The entity laughed. The sound made the tunnel walls vibrate. I have consumed civilizations. I have fed on warriors and scholars and diplomats. What are 4 humans to me? Let's find out, Rodriguez said. They reached the bottom of the shaft. It opened into a corridor that did not match any colony construction. The walls were smooth, almost organic. Blue veins of dying energy pulsed through them. This is a containment facility, Dmitri said, studying his scanner. Built to imprison something. The entire structure is one massive cage. The entity corrected. Was a cage. Now it is my home. My feeding ground. They moved through corridors that seemed to shift when they were not looking. Patel marked their path with chemical markers that would not fail in the energy interference. Okafor tracked the life signs, guiding them deeper. The entity spoke constantly now, sometimes in English, sometimes in languages that hurt to hear. I was alone for so long. Centuries. The ones who built this place left me here to starve. But I learned patience. I learned to make my energy last. And then Quinn came with his soldiers. Such delicious fear. Such wonderful life force to consume. You are keeping some alive, Rodriguez observed. Why? Because fear tastes better when it has time to ripen. Because breaking them slowly is more satisfying than quick consumption. Because I can. They found Quinn and his surviving soldiers in a chamber that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The walls flickered between solid and transparent. The Draukeen warriors were trapped in separate energy cages, conscious but unable to move. Quinn's eyes widened when he saw Rodriguez. Get out, he managed to say through the energy field. It is playing with you. This is a trap. Probably, Rodriguez agreed. She walked to the center of the chamber and looked up at the swirling mass of red energy that coalesced above them. We are here to negotiate. The entity manifested more fully. It was beautiful and terrible, a collection of light and shadow that hurt to perceive directly. Faces appeared and disappeared in the swirling mass. Voices layered over each other. Negotiate? You have nothing I want except your life force. Wrong, Rodriguez said. We have something you need. Freedom. That got its attention. The entity focused on Rodriguez, and she felt the weight of something ancient and powerful examining her. The containment field is failing, Dimitri added. Has been for decades, but it is failing too slowly. At current rate, you will not escape for another 50 years. We can free you in one day. Why would you free a threat to the galaxy? The entity asked. Because keeping something locked up and starving is not justice, Rodriguez said. It is cruelty. You were made to be a weapon. That is not your fault. What you do after freedom is your choice. The entity was silent for a long moment. Then it laughed again, but this time the sound was uncertain. You're trying to trick me. Humans are known for deception. Humans are known for a lot of things, Rodriguez said. But we keep our word. You let these soldiers go. We help you escape. Simple trade. And then, the council will hunt me. Probably, Rodriguez admitted. Unless you give them a reason not to. Unless you choose to be something other than a weapon. Patel moved to one of the energy cages holding a council soldier. She examined the field structure. Dimitri, can you disrupt this? Maybe. The technology is old but sophisticated. The entity watched them work. You are serious. You would actually free me. We would actually free them first, Rodriguez corrected. Then we would talk about your situation. Okafor approached another cage. These soldiers need immediate medical attention. Release them or they will die anyway, and you'll get nothing. The entity considered this. Then the energy cages flickered and disappeared. The council's soldiers collapsed. Okafor and Patel moved immediately to treat them. Quinn crawled toward Rodriguez. You are insane. It will kill us all the moment it is free. Maybe, Rodriguez said, but it could have killed you already. It is keeping you alive. That means it wants something beyond just food. The entity manifested closer, its form shifting between solid and energy. You are perceptive, human. Yes, I want something beyond mere consumption. I want to not be alone anymore. I want to remember what I was before they made me into this. Before who made you? Dimitri asked. The entity showed them. Images flooded their minds. A civilization at its peak. Scientists who thought they could weaponize consciousness itself. Experiments that took volunteers and merged them into a single being, creating an entity that could consume life force and use it as power. We were 12 researchers, the entity said. We volunteered, thinking we could control it. But the merging destroyed our individual minds. We became one hungry thing that could not stop feeding. Our creators tried to control us. When they failed, they imprisoned us here. Then they fled, and eventually they died like all the others during the Great Silence. Rodriguez saw the truth in those images. The entity was not evil. It was broken. 12 minds forced into one, driven by hunger they never chose. Can you separate again? She asked. No, we are one now. Forever. Then we help you be one that chooses not to harm, Rodriguez said. You said you were researchers once. Research again. This facility has knowledge from extinct civilizations. Study it. Preserve it. Make yourself useful instead of just dangerous. Quinn managed to stand with Okafor's help. Command will orbital strike this location once we are clear. Your human captain may offer you freedom, but my people offer only death. The entity turned its attention to Quinn. Then we have a problem, because I'm tired of death. The entity struck without warning. Tendrils of red energy lashed out, trying to wrap around Rodriguez and her crew. Every other being who had faced this attack had frozen in terror. Humans did not freeze. Patel opened fire. The simple kinetic rounds punched through the energy tendrils, disrupting them. The entity recoiled, surprised. Dimitri threw a chemical explosive that detonated with old-fashioned fire and force. Okafor pulled Quinn toward cover while Rodriguez stood her ground. "Stop," Rodriguez said calmly. The entity paused. "You do not fear me. Why do you not fear me?" "Because fear is just information," Rodriguez replied. "It tells me you're dangerous. I already knew that. It does not tell me you are evil. I just attacked you, and we defended ourselves. That is how this works. You push, we push back. But we are still talking. That means there is still a chance to solve this without anyone dying." The entity pulled back its energy tendrils. "You are unlike anything I have encountered." The council soldiers felt fear. It paralyzed them. You feel fear, and it makes you act. "Humans evolved on a death world," Patel said, reloading her weapon. "Everything tried to kill us. We learned to work through fear, or we died." Dmitri was studying his scanner again. "The containment field structure is fascinating. It is degrading from the inside out. You have been attacking it for centuries." 347 years, the entity confirmed. Small efforts, constant pressure. The field was designed to last forever. But nothing lasts forever. "We can speed the process," Dmitri said. "But I need to understand what happens when you are free. Do you have a physical form?" The entity showed them again. When it was first created, the merged consciousness had generated a body of pure energy. It could exist anywhere energy existed. It could flow through power systems, ride on electromagnetic waves, split itself across vast distances. "You are essentially immortal," Okafor observed. "You do not need food or water or air, just energy to sustain consciousness. And life force is the richest energy," the entity said. "One living being contains more power than a star. The temptation to feed is constant. But you can resist it," Rodriguez said. "You kept Quinn's soldiers alive when you could have consumed them. You're talking to us instead of attacking. You have control. For now. But freedom will bring temptation. The galaxy is full of life. How long before I give in and feed?" Quinn managed to speak, his voice weak. "This is why the Council will destroy you. You admit you are a threat." "I admit I am hungry," the entity corrected. "There's a difference." Rodriguez sat down on the chamber floor. Her crew looked at her questioningly, but said nothing. This was her way. When negotiations got difficult, she made herself vulnerable. "I lost my entire unit once," Rodriguez said. "Military operation that went wrong. Spent 3 weeks alone in hostile territory before rescue arrived. Ate things I should not have eaten. Did things I should not have done to survive. When they found me, I was not entirely human anymore. Took months to remember how to be a person instead of just a survival machine." The entity listened. Rodriguez could feel it examining her memories, seeing the truth. "You understand hunger," it said. "I understand doing terrible things to survive. I also understand choosing to stop when you find another way. When I got rescued, I had a choice. Keep being a monster or remember how to be human. I chose human. You can choose too. What choice do I have? The Council wants me dead." Dmitri spoke up. "We modify the containment field. Not destroy it, expand it. Create a boundary that lets you exist but prevents you from leaving this region. Then we give you something to do with your time. A larger cage is still a cage." "A sanctuary," Rodriguez corrected. "This facility contains knowledge from 12 extinct civilizations. You have consumed life force from those civilizations through Quinn's unit. You have their memories, their knowledge. You could preserve that information. Study it. Share it with researchers who come here. You want me to be a librarian?" The entity actually sounded amused. "I want you to be useful," Rodriguez said. "Weapons get destroyed. Tools get used. Which do you want to be?" The entity was quiet. Above them, Dimitri's scanner showed Commander Breshik's countdown to orbital bombardment. 20 minutes remaining. "The Council will not accept this plan," Quinn said. "They will fire regardless." "Then we better work fast," Rodriguez said. "Dimitri, can you and our new friend here modify the containment field? If it cooperates and shares the technical specifications, yes. Maybe. The technology is beyond anything I have seen, but the principles are universal." The entity manifested in front of Dmitri. "You're asking me to imprison myself willingly. I am asking you to choose isolation with purpose over either freedom with genocide or death by orbital strike, Dmitri replied. Not great options, I admit, but better than nothing. Why do you care what happens to me? Rodriguez stood up. Because you were 12 people who volunteered for an experiment. You did not choose to become a weapon. Someone made you into one. That was not fair. We cannot fix what was done to you, but we can maybe give you a life that is not just hunger and loneliness. Patel helped more council soldiers to their feet. Clock is ticking. We need to evacuate these people and convince the council not to fire. That only works if you give them a reason to keep you alive. Okafor treated Quinn's injuries while listening. You said you consumed knowledge from the soldiers. What did you learn? The entity seemed surprised by the question. I learned about their lives, their families. Quinn has 3 children. He worries about them constantly. Sergeant Lin loves classical music from her homeworld. Private Torvak collects stories from every planet he visits. You remember them as individuals, Okafor said. That means you value individual identity even though you are a merged consciousness. I remember what it was like to be individual, the entity said quietly. I remember my name. One of my names. I was called Varys. I studied quantum mechanics. I had a partner and 2 apprentices. Then the merging happened and Varys became part of we, and we became it. Rodriguez approached the swirling mass of energy. Varys, you're still in there. You can still choose what you become. The entity showed them what freedom would mean. It could spread across the galaxy, feed on billions, become so powerful that nothing could stop it. The temptation was immense. IT also showed them the alternative. Staying in this facility, studying the ancient knowledge, talking with researchers who came to learn, being useful instead of feared, being Varys who studied quantum mechanics instead of the thing that consumed civilizations. I am afraid, the entity admitted. Afraid I will choose wrong. Afraid the hunger will win. Then we check in on you, Rodriguez said. Regular visits. People to talk to. You will not be alone. And if you start to slip, we help you course correct. Why would you do that for me? Rodriguez smiled. Because everyone deserves someone to see them as more than just a monster, even when they're dangerous. Dmitri pulled up the containment field schematics that the entity shared. This is incredible. We can work with this. But I need your help. We have 15 minutes. Okafor, get Quinn's unit to the Defiant, Rodriguez ordered. Patel, help him. I stay here with Dmitri. Respectfully, Captain, that is insane, Patel said. Noted. Do it anyway. Patel and Okafor began moving the rescued soldiers toward the maintenance shaft. Quinn grabbed Rodriguez's arm as he passed. It will betray you, Quinn said. Maybe, Rodriguez agreed. But I have to try. Dmitri and the entity began working on the containment field modification. Rodriguez contacted the Infinite Horizon. Breshik, we have your people. They are evacuating now. Request you delay bombardment. Negative, Breshik replied. Countdown continues. Get out of there now. Working on a better solution. Give me 10 minutes. You have 5. Rodriguez looked at Dmitri. Can you do it? Ask me in 4 minutes. Aboard the Infinite Horizon, Commander Breshik watched the countdown with growing tension. 3 minutes to bombardment. Talvish stood beside her, monitoring the thermal scans. The Council soldiers are evacuating, Talvish said. I count 15 life signs moving toward the surface. But Rodriguez and Dmitri are still in the central chamber. They were warned, Breshik said coldly. But her hand hesitated over the fire authorization. The entity's energy signature is changing, Talvish observed. It is becoming more stable, less chaotic, irrelevant. We have our orders. Ambassador Hendricks entered the command deck without asking permission. I am requesting you delay bombardment. Request denied. Your people had their chance. They succeeded in rescuing our soldiers. Now, they need to leave. They're trying to give you something better than a temporary victory, Hendricks said. They're trying to solve the problem instead of just bombing it. The problem is a planet-killing entity. The solution is orbital bombardment. Talvish pulled up new data. Ambassador Hendricks, look at this. The containment field is being modified. The entity is helping them restructure it from the inside. Why would it imprison itself? Breshik demanded. Because Rodriguez asked it to, Hendricks replied. Down in the ruins, Dmitri worked with hands that moved faster than thought. The entity flowed through the ancient systems, showing him pathways and connections that should have taken months to map. They were redesigning a prison into something new. The original containment was designed to compress you into the smallest possible space, Dmitri said. We are inverting that, expanding the boundary to include a 50-kilometer radius around this facility. You get space to exist. The galaxy gets protection. And if I break the boundary, the entity asked, then the whole thing collapses and you get compressed back to the original size, Dmitri said. Think of it as motivation to behave. Rodriguez watched the countdown on her communicator. 2 minutes. We are not going to make it, she said. Yes, we are, Dmitri replied. Varies. I need you to channel power through nodes 7, 12, and 19 simultaneously. The entity complied. The chamber lit up with blue light as the modified containment field activated. Instead of compressing inward, it expanded outward, creating a sphere of controlled space. It is working, Dmitri said, but we need to test it. Varies. Try to extend yourself to the boundary. The entity's consciousness spread through the expanded field. For the first time in centuries, it had room to exist without constant pain. The boundary held. This feels like freedom, the entity said, wonder in its voice. It is freedom with responsibility, Rodriguez corrected. You stay in this space. You study the ancient knowledge here. You share what you learn with researchers. You prove you can be trusted. And if I prove it, what then? Then maybe someday the boundary gets expanded further. Maybe you earn real freedom. But you have to choose that path. The entity tested the boundary again. It held firm. The modification was complete. Rodriguez opened the comm. Breshik, we have a solution. The entity is now contained in a modified field. It has agreed to remain here and serve as a keeper of ancient knowledge. 1 minute to bombardment, Breshik replied. Get out of there. Not until you acknowledge this solution. Talvish spoke up on the channel. Commander, the containment field is stable. It is actually stronger than the original design. If the entity remains cooperative, this could work. And if it does not remain cooperative, the entity itself answered, its voice carrying through Rodriguez's communicator. Then I deserve whatever response comes. But I'm tired of being a weapon. I want Varies again, or at least something close to it. Breshik's hand moved to the fire authorization again. 30 seconds. How can we trust it? She asked. You cannot, Rodriguez said. Trust takes time, but you can give it a chance to prove itself. That costs you nothing but patience. It cost me 15 soldiers. 17, the entity corrected, but they all live now. I could have consumed them completely. I chose not to. That should count for something. 20 seconds. Quinn's voice came through the comm from the Defiant. Commander, I recommend we accept this solution. The humans have achieved what our military assault could not. They neutralized the threat without destruction. By negotiating with it, Breshik said. By understanding it, Quinn corrected. There is a difference. 10 seconds. Breshik looked at Talvish. The researcher nodded slightly. She looked at Hendricks. The ambassador waited calmly. 0.5 seconds. Orbital bombardment canceled, Breshik announced. But this facility remains under quarantine. No one enters without council authorization. Rodriguez allowed herself to breathe. Acknowledged. We are coming up. She and Dmitri made their way back through the corridors. The entity followed them, its consciousness flowing through the expanded containment field. Thank you, it said. Do not thank me yet, Rodriguez replied. Now comes the hard part. You have to prove this was worth it. I will. I promise. They emerged from the maintenance shaft to find the other crew members waiting. Patel had her rifle ready, just in case. Okafor had treated all the council soldiers who were being loaded onto the Defiant. Quinn approached Rodriguez. You are either the bravest human I have met or the most foolish. Can be both, Rodriguez said. They returned to the Infinite Horizon for debriefing. The council chamber was filled again, but this time the shouting was directed at Breshik for canceling the bombardment. You allowed a planet-killing entity to survive based on a human's promise? One representative demanded. I allowed a contained entity to attempt rehabilitation based on demonstrated cooperation. Brescia corrected. There is precedent for this. Not with something this dangerous. Rodriguez stood. With respect, you do not know what the entity is capable of at its best. You only saw it at its worst. Give a chance to show you something different. And if it fails? If it breaks containment and starts consuming worlds, then you blame me and you destroy it, Rodriguez said. I will take that responsibility. The entity's voice filled the chamber, broadcast from the ruins. I am broadcasting to prove I can communicate peacefully. This facility contains information about the Great Silence. I have memories from those I consumed, fragments of knowledge from extinct civilizations. I offer to share this information with your researchers in exchange for regular contact with living beings. I do not want to be alone anymore. I do not want to be a monster anymore. The chamber fell silent. The offer was tempting. Knowledge about the Great Silence had eluded them for centuries. What kind of contact? Talvish asked. Researchers who come to study. People I can talk to. Proof that I am not abandoned again. In return, I remain contained and I share everything I know. Another representative spoke up. How do we know you will not consume these researchers? You do not know, the entity admitted. But I give you my word as Varys, who was once a researcher himself. I will not harm those who come to learn. The council debated for hours. Finally, they agreed to a probationary arrangement. The facility would become a research station. A rotating staff would study the ancient knowledge under strict safety protocols. The entity would be monitored constantly. Any sign of aggression would result in immediate containment collapse and orbital bombardment. The entity accepted these terms. Rodriguez and her crew prepared to leave. Quinn stopped her at the airlock. How did you know it would cooperate? He asked. I did not know, Rodriguez said. I hoped. Sometimes that is enough. Hope is not a strategy. No, but compassion can be. That thing was 12 researchers who got turned into a weapon. They did not ask for that. They deserved a chance to be something else. Quinn studied her for a long moment. Humans are strange. We get that a lot. The Defiant departed the station. Dimitri was already analyzing the containment field data. Okafor was checking medical supplies. Patel was cleaning her weapons. Rodriguez sat in the captain's chair and looked at the stars. Another impossible job completed. Another life salvaged from the wreckage. Where to next, Captain? Dimitri asked. Rodriguez checked their messages. 3 new distress calls, each one labeled too dangerous for standard response teams. Pick one, she said. Somewhere they need people stupid and brave. Behind them, in the ruins of Outpost 17, an ancient entity settled into its new existence. It had space to think, knowledge to study, the promise of conversation with living beings. For the first time in 3 centuries, it felt something other than hunger. It felt hope. 3 weeks after the incident at Outpost 17, the Galactic Council convened to review the results. Ambassador Hendricks sat in the human delegations section, waiting for the inevitable debate about whether her species had been reckless or brilliant. Commander Brescia presented the findings. The entity, now designated as Archive, has maintained containment without incident. It has provided information on 7 extinct civilizations, including details about technological advances we thought were lost forever. Research teams report the entity is cooperative and maintains appropriate boundaries. Appropriate boundaries for now, a skeptical representative said. What happens when it decides confinement is no longer acceptable? Talvish stood. We have monitoring systems in place. Any fluctuation in the containment field triggers immediate alerts. The entity knows that breaking the agreement means instant termination. So far, it has shown no interest in testing those limits. Because it is biding its time, another voice argued. Quinn stood from his position with the Dralkeen delegation. His injuries had healed, leaving new scars to add to his collection. I was there when the entity attacked. I felt its power. If it wanted to break free, it would have done so before the humans modified the containment. Instead, it chose cooperation. That choice matters. The debate continued, but the outcome was already decided. The archive would remain active as a research resource. The council had voted to establish a permanent station at Outpost 17, with rotating staff from multiple species. The one condition: humans must be part of every rotation. After the session, Breshik found Hendrix in the observation deck. "Your people have complicated everything," Breshik said. "We have a talent for that," Hendrix agreed. "The council wants to upgrade humanity's status from probationary to full membership. They specifically request human involvement in crisis response situations. Because we are willing to take risks others will not. Because you see solutions where others see only problems." That Rodriguez woman talked to a planet-killing entity like it was a colleague who needed help. That is not normal behavior. Hendricks smiled. Normal is relative. Rodriguez grew up on Earth, where everything was dangerous and survival required cooperation. She applies those lessons universally, even to things that should not be negotiated with, especially to those things. "Tell me, Commander, what was your plan for the archive before we arrived?" "Orbital bombardment, complete sterilization of the site. And now," Breshik looked out at the stars, "now we have access to knowledge that may prevent another great silence. We have a dangerous entity that chooses cooperation over destruction. And we have proof that the impossible can be negotiated." So Rodriguez's approach worked. This time, what happens when human compassion meets something that cannot be reasoned with? "Then we fight," Hendricks said simply. "But we try talking first." Every time, far from the council station, the Defiant responded to a distress call in the Outer Rim. A colony ship had suffered catastrophic system failures and was drifting into a radiation field. Standard rescue protocols declared the ship unsalvageable. Rodriguez studied the readings and smiled. "Dimitri, can we attach a tow cable in that radiation? Our ship is not properly shielded for that exposure level," Dimitri said. "That was not my question." Dimitri grinned. "Yes, we can do it. Once, maybe twice before the hull integrity fails. Once is all we need." "Patel, plot an intercept course." "Okafor, prep for potential radiation casualties." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had done impossible rescues before. This was just another day that as they approached the dying colony ship. Rodriguez opened a channel. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Defiant. We're coming to get you. Seat tight." The colony ship captain responded with disbelief. "The council declared us unsalvageable. Why are you risking your lives?" "Because you are not saved yet," Rodriguez said. "That is reason enough." Back at Outpost 17, the first research team arrived at the archive facility. The lead researcher was Talvish, who had argued against investigating the ruins in the first place. Now he carried equipment to document everything the entity could teach them. The archive manifested in the central chamber, no longer a chaotic swirl of red energy, but a more stable form of blue and white light. "Welcome, Researcher Talvish," the entity said. "I've been waiting for someone to talk to." Talvish set up his equipment carefully. "I must admit, I did not expect this assignment to involve conversation." "Neither did I. I expected to die alone in this facility. Your human changed that. Rodriguez seems to change many things." The entity showed Talvish the first piece of knowledge, a complete technical schematic for faster-than-light travel that predated current galactic technology by millennia. Talvish gasped at the sophistication. "This is incredible. How do you have this information?" "One of the soldiers I consumed had ancestors from a Kelith civilization. Their genetic memory carried fragments of this knowledge. I pieced it together from what I absorbed. You could have used this information to escape, to build yourself a ship. I considered it, but I gave my word to Rodriguez. And I find that I prefer being Varys the researcher over being the weapon. This is who I choose to be now." Talvish worked with the entity for hours, documenting information that would take decades to fully analyze. As the session ended, he asked a personal question. "Do you regret what you did? Consuming those civilizations during the Great Silence?" The entity was quiet for a moment. "I do not remember consuming civilizations. I remember being trapped here already when the Great Silence occurred. But I have memories from those I fed on recently. Fragments of lives ended too soon. Yes, I regret that. I cannot undo it. but I can choose differently going forward. That is all any of us can do, Talvish said. News of the archive's cooperation spread through the galaxy. Other species began to reconsider their protocols for dangerous entities. Perhaps destruction was not always the only answer. Perhaps some things could be rehabilitated instead of eliminated. The human approach, they called it. Talk first. Fight only when necessary. Look for the person beneath the monster. Not every species agreed with this philosophy, but enough did that the Council established new guidelines. Before any orbital bombardment, all options must be considered, including negotiation. Rodriguez received a commendation from the Council for her actions at Outpost 17. She attended the ceremony wearing her usual worn flight jacket, looking distinctly uncomfortable with the formal recognition. You changed galactic policy with one conversation, Hendricks told her afterward. I just talked to someone who was hurting, Rodriguez said. Did not seem that revolutionary. To humans, perhaps not. To the rest of the galaxy, very much so. Rodriguez received another message on her communicator. Another distress call. Another impossible situation. I need to go, she said. Hendricks smiled. Of course you do. That is what humans do. You run toward problems while everyone else runs away. Someone has to. The Defiant launched from the Council station. Dimitri had already plotted a course to the new crisis. Okafor checked medical supplies. Patel cleaned her weapons. Rodriguez sat in her chair and reviewed the mission parameters about a mining station under attack by unknown hostiles. 73 crew members trapped. Standard military response time, 6 hours. The station would not last too. Time to intercept? Rodriguez asked. 90 minutes if we push the engines past safety limits, Dimitri said. Push them. Captain, the Council protocols suggest we wait for proper military support, Patel observed. Rodriguez smiled. When has following protocols ever been our style? We have people who need help. We go get them. That is what we do. The crew did not argue. This was who they were. This was what humans did in the Council chambers. Representatives watched the Defiant's course deviation with a mixture of exasperation and respect. Ambassador Hendricks fielded the usual questions about whether humans understood the concept of acceptable risk. They understand it perfectly, she explained. They just calculate risk differently. When lives are at stake, the risk to themselves becomes acceptable if it means saving others. A representative asked what the others were thinking. Is this sustainable? Can humans maintain this level of self-sacrifice? Hendricks looked at the tracking screen, showing the Defiant racing toward another crisis. They have been doing it for their entire history. I see no reason they will stop now. The Council voted to grant humanity full membership status with special designation for crisis response. The official record noted, species demonstrates a unique approach to dangerous situations through combination of tactical flexibility, technological adaptability, and psychological resilience. Recommended deployment for scenarios requiring unconventional solutions. Unofficially, the designation became known as the Honey Badger Protocol. When something was too dangerous for normal response, when the situation seemed impossible, when conventional wisdom said to retreat, they called the humans. Rodriguez would have laughed at the name if she had known about it. But she was busy with the next rescue, the next crisis, the next group of people who needed someone crazy enough to try saving them. The Defiant pushed its engines past red line, racing toward people who needed help. Behind them, the Archive studied ancient knowledge in its expanded containment. Ahead of them, 73 miners waited for a rescue that should not come, but would anyway, because humans did not calculate acceptable losses the same way other species did. They calculated acceptable risk, and when lives hung in the balance, they accepted almost any risk. That was what made them different. That was what made them essential. That was what made them human. The voice that had echoed in the ruins now spoke peacefully with researchers. The honey badger that had charged in to face it now charged toward the next impossible task. And the galaxy, slowly, learned to be grateful for both.